with me to discuss this very, very important subject, I have the pleasure of introducing to you 4 amazing startup founders who have contributed to innovation and are award winners of the Startup Energy Transition. So I'm going to ask my panelists, when I introduce your name, kindly give a nod or a little wave so that the audience can know who you are. So I'd like to introduce the CEO of Kraftwerk, and that is Sascha Cohen. And then next to him, we have Aileen Ozekarakis, who is the CEO of Village Data Analytics, the Chief of Staff, I beg your pardon, the Chief of Staff of Village Data Analytics. And then we also have next to her Claudia Roth, who is a project manager of EcoLego. And then finally, we have Sebastian Berning, who is the CEO of Instagrid. And then sitting to my far right is the founder and the creator of the Startup Energy Transition Awards, the SET Awards, we call it in short, and that is Mr. Andreas Kalman. Now, before we come back and really get into understanding how these 4 people come to be sitting with us, I would like to ask Mr. Andreas to say a few words and just tell us, how do you feel seeing these 4 individuals here on stage today?
Well, thank you, Linda, and I'm very happy to have this panel today. But before I say a few sentences about this, I want to introduce the 5th startup on stage here, and that is you, Linda. You're working in a startup as well, Giraffe Bioenergy,
yes,
and that is also very important. Next time we have you as an interview.
Thank you.
But when we created this SET Award, the Startup Energy Transition Award, for us it was very important to create some kind of a global network on innovation, connecting minds for a greater good. And since then, we had 2,700 applications of startups, and I think we did indeed create a great network of startups. And those we see here on stage, well, unfortunately are not from all over the world, but from a special part of this world only, that is due to Corona. But they are here, well, in the name of all the others. I think it is super important that this conference focuses on innovation, because if we do not scale those smart ideas, business models and innovation, we will never be able to reach our climate targets. And that's why this panel is important, and that's why I'm here. And I just wanted to say hello and thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for those very kind remarks. Excellent. So how we're going to spend the next 30 or 40 minutes is, firstly, I'm going to give the panelists a chance to just tell us a little bit about your organization, the problems you're solving, perhaps 4 minutes each. And then after that, we're going to go into a discussion where we're going to do a deeper dive into what your future plans are. We are a startup, but obviously we have growth plans, right? So what your future plans are. And then the next thing we're going to discuss is how specifically those plans fit into our climate goals. And then we'll discuss a little bit about how the current policies actually support you and what you would like to see done differently as far as the policy framework is. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to make a little bit of a comment around how your innovations would fit into the current political environment and what we're doing. So a little bit of a comment around how you see your work as solving some of these global problems, right? So that is the last thing we're going to end up with our discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you, Dr. Kuhn, CEO Kraftwerk, to tell us about your innovation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. Kraftwerk is a company that developed a new advanced solid oxide fuel cell that is different to other fuel cells. We started already 20 years ago in fundamental research on this technology. We developed a new nanotechnology and a nanotechnologic layer made of yttrium zirconia and yttrium stabilized zirconia, and that is part of the fuel cell that we now can produce. and it is used in several applications, not only in standard fuel cells, but also in fuel batteries or in electrolyzers. So it allows to produce methane or other gases like hydrogen and ammonium and other e-fuels with very high efficiencies, up to 90%. That is important technology for the next time, because we need to transport the technology, we need to transport the electricity to the place where it is needed. Example given, in a car or into an airplane, therefore this has to be done with very high efficiencies. And on the airplanes, for example, with our technology, we can then produce electricity out of the e-fuels again, also with very high efficiencies, and that is a way to get natural energy, solar energy, into the application where it is needed.
Fantastic. You actually raise a very good point, close to my heart. You know, just minimizing transmission losses is something that we definitely recognize in Africa, but certainly your technology is very, very advanced, you know, fantastic, brilliant. Yeah, just really reducing demand and reusing. I really like that. Over to you, Aileen, and just introduce your organization and the problems you're solving.
Sure. Thank you, Linda. So at Village Data Analytics, we have created a data platform which serves as a basis for planning energy systems. So what we do is we fuse different data sources, such as satellite imagery, statistical data, survey data, smart meter data, IoT data, just lots of different sources. And we bring them together into one map. From here, our users can then analyze, plan, and monitor energy projects. They can interactively collaborate in it, and just save a lot of resources when it comes to developing and executing such projects. For example, we would have, let's say, a government working alongside financiers, investors on a project, and they could then collaborate through VIDA with the developers and the on-ground teams without having to be in the same time zone or location. They can just work within this digital twin that we create. And what we do currently, so we work mainly in developing and emerging countries in Africa and Asia, but also in Germany with municipalities. But for example, we are just in the progress of a project that is also very close to my heart with the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the IFC. And this is a very, very large project to replace diesel generators. And also we're working with the government of Pakistan to digitize the grid. And we just recently also partnered with a German electricity supplier, so a lot of very exciting things coming up.
Fantastic, great work, and thank you for sharing the information about the markets that you work in. Brilliant. We will come back and dive into how, you know, we can interact more with your organizations. Yeah, but for now, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Claudia, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about Ecoligo.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, Ecoligo is a global energy as a service provider, supplying businesses in emerging markets with clean energy. So we develop and we operate those clean energy projects in the markets where they can have their highest CO2 impact. And we finance them here in Germany through the crowd investing platform ecoligo.investments. We were founded in 2016, so it's our 7th year, and I'm a part of a team of 30 people who are spread around the globe. We started off in Ghana, which was actually where one of the first projects we realized was also together with the German energy agencies with the Renewable Energy Solutions Program. It was for Stanbic Bank in Ghana. We had that support there. And then the next market we entered was Kenya. Now we're also active in South America, Latin America, and Asia, with Vietnam and Thailand being our markets. And yes, we're headquartered here in Berlin. And what we did or achieved so far are 141 projects, which translate into 66 megawatts. Our clients are commercial and industrial clients, businesses in emerging markets, for example, Fairafrique, a chocolate factory, a chocolate producer in Ghana. They just built their new chocolate factory right outside of Accra, and we provided them with finance and the operation and maintenance of the solar rooftop system on their factory. We also have, for example, manufacturing businesses, Kim Duc as a reusable bag producer in Vietnam, or a fair trade flower farm, rose farm actually produces Simbi roses in Kenya. What they all have in common is high energy costs from the grid, and we are here to solve that problem by offering them our energy as a service solution, which means they enter into a leasing or power purchase agreement with us, where they pay monthly fees for the electricity that we generate with the systems that are built on their grounds, with the solar PV systems. And we finance those systems here in Germany with the crowd, and this is the part where that I'm responsible for, the crowd investing platform, who has to now raised over 21 million euros by just 3,600 crowd investors, which is a number I'm super proud of. We have a very loyal crowd who made that happen so far. And yes, we take basically care of all the rest. The client doesn't need to have any knowledge, and they don't have to invest any capital in it, because they pay off the solar system during the contract duration with us. And what's best about it is they also save money, because our solution offers cheaper kilowatt-hour prices than they would get from the utility on site in the location. So this is probably one of the reasons why we won the SET Award last year, really the innovation in our business model, where we create this win-win-win situation for the crowd investors in Germany, who gain 5 to 6% of interest, comparatively large number of interest in comparing it to just leaving your money in the bank account at the moment. Clients who save money, and us making our margin, of course, in the contracts.
Wow.
Thank you.
No, fantastic. I'm just curious, and we can come back to this a little bit later. When we talk about energy, so you work specifically in the solar space.
And we would like to enlarge our business, our product range to other projects as well, to other technologies, and also energy efficiency measures in the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so finally I'd like to have on stage, have the mic, Sebastian Berning, who is, as I said, the CEO of Instagrid. Tell us about your organization.
Thank you. So at Instagrid, we're on a mission to ultimately remove up to 1 billion combustion engines from the global energy system. We're talking about diesel generators, for example, and small engines that you need for cold chain logistics. So they are basically everywhere, and we want to replace them with advanced mobile batteries. So instead of generating electricity or other forms of energy on site from small combustion engines, which is really a huge problem, which is rarely addressed in the public. We're all talking about engines in road transport, and we have a lot of famous companies looking after replacing these. This is really something that has been overlooked so far, at least in our opinion. So what we are doing is, instead of local generation, which is extremely inefficient, we turn to larger sources of electricity, like large PV plants that we heard about before, and we do the last mile electricity by means of super portable but very capable advanced batteries. So the reason we're doing this, first of all, of course, we want to stop all these combustion engines from contributing to global warming by burning billions of liters of fuel every day. And secondly, we want cleaner air, because a single one of these engines is could be polluting in terms of smog-forming emissions, similarly to about 100 modern cars. So this is in terms of NOx and particulate matter, it's a huge problem. And third, we want that these engines stop eating the money from basically probably the poorest economies on our planet, because people generally with the lowest or the least access to electricity, they pay the highest rates, as probably every one of you is aware of. So we really believe in forming grids, forming last mile grids for regional electricity supply by means of advanced batteries. So far, we're only operating in Europe. We have a very simple business model. We're kind of selling these devices to the end customers, which are usually in construction, for example, which is, I cannot tell that our customers have a dirty business, but there's a lot to do on that side, let's put it this way. And it's definitely something that we're really proud of, that we see a lot of traction in this sector. And now we're moving forward to supply other sectors with energy.
Fantastic. I'm curious how, and maybe in the next round you can address this. I'm curious about how you think about the life cycle of batteries, because battery technology, obviously, how long do they last, and then what do you do at the end of the battery life? Perhaps you can address that in the next round. Now we have a bit of an impression of what this 4 amazing individuals do. So I'm going to give you a chance to look down the next 3-5 years. And tell us a little bit more about what is the next frontier for your startup. What are you looking to grow into? 3 to 5 year time frame.
Yeah, that's a good question. And looking in the future is not so easy.
Yeah.
But for us, it's that we got some contracts with major automotive and airplane industry players. So, for example, Airbus, Nissan, and even Volkswagen are on our contractor list. And to be able to supply later on to such industries, it's always needed that you have several fabrics, not only one, because the risk is too high with only one facility. So we are trying to build more than this one gigafactory now, and that is not so easy because we don't have much time for it. And that's the major topic that we have on our list. And therefore we need partners, of course, and have to build up our community.
Yeah. Now, you took the words right out my mouth. What partners do you need? Obviously, financing is one of the ingredients we need for growth and future, and then also the right partners, the kind of cooperation and collaboration. Thank you for raising that. Now, over to you, Eileen. What does 3 to 5 years look like, and how are you particularly plugging into the energy transition with your future plans?
Well, we obviously will continue to engage with public and private sector partners to help scale and accelerate the energy transition and the energy access globally. And what we are realizing is that energy access, or SDG 7, is basically the foundation for all other SDGs and all other developmental initiatives as well. So we are experiencing many new use cases that our product can be beneficial for. For example, with projects in healthcare, in agriculture, which is going to be huge in the upcoming years, obviously. And so we're currently looking at new markets that always connect to energy access, and using this platform to help analyze and also on the long term monitor such projects.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Data, definitely an enabling platform for sure. Fantastic. I'm going to turn over to you, Claudia, and answer that same question. What does it look like for you at Ecoligo?
Thanks. Yes, so in the next 3 to 5 years, we want to roll out our solution in other markets, other emerging markets where the regulatory environment allows this, because we need a liberalized energy market for that, of course, and also not highly subsidized energy costs. And as you pointed out, we focus at the moment strongly on solar PV systems, but we are already looking into more energy efficiency, and we want to and other technologies, so we can approach customers or businesses' energy supply more holistically. And we want to offer our solution also for energy efficiency, solar hot water, electrification of mobility is a big topic for us. And another one, of course, will be batteries. We see the decreasing prices of batteries and how they, of course, at the moment, our customers are only grid-connected customers. So it doesn't play such a huge role for them at the moment, but there is the demand to become more independent, even more independent from the utilities. So we can, in the future, couple our solar systems with energy storage. This is on the side in the markets where we build our products. On the financing side, I really want to roll out our platform in other EU countries, because at the moment it's only possible for German investors to invest, and we're only active in Germany. This is where our projects are financed at the moment, but I think there's so much huge untapped potential in crowdfunding in general. The EU regulation is there, and we just need to take the next steps and implement it. And also offer new products like a green bond, and also in the beginning of this year we started with a second financial pillar for our project finance, because as we grow, also our project sizes grow in the markets. And we need also institutional partners who finance together with the crowd. And one collaboration we already did was with Oikocredit, which we announced in the beginning of this year. And they are financing a portfolio of projects in Ghana and Kenya already together with our crowd. And we want to have more collaborations like this in the future.
Fantastic. You know, you touched on some policy work as well. No, that's great, because that brings us to the next discussion. Andreas, I'm going to ask you after Sebastian speaks, just if you've got any impressions on the ambitious plans that the panelists have talked about. But first, I'm going to ask Sebastian to give us his 3 to 5 year. What is it that your organization is working on?
Yes. So as I said before, we are today producing batteries, and we're selling them directly to end customers, which is a hugely successful business. But on the other hand, we believe that ultimately we should be the owners of all of our batteries. We believe that batteries are inherently an asset that should be operated in a circular fashion. So we really want to move on and offer services. We want to do that last mile electricity delivery and really become the owner of all of our assets in the future. I hope we can explain that to our investors, and then be responsible end to end for getting the electricity in a reliable fashion to the end customer. We also want to do that in vastly different applications all over the world. We believe that the energy distribution is actually a general problem. I think every single economy that is turning towards renewable energies is facing distribution problems, is facing the problem, how can we build distribution capabilities fast enough and on the right scale. I think we can offer an answer for many of these problems if we manage to build the right service infrastructure and the right asset management on all of these devices that we want to produce.
No, that's great, and that resonates with me as well in the project that I'm working on. So evacuating energy from where it's being produced to where it's needed is a challenge that is, for now quite costly. Right, because then we're asking the utilities to extend their lines, and then we've talked about power losses and things like that. So certainly we'll be watching your advancement and wishing you all the best. Our special guest, I do not know whether you have some comments based on the 2 questions we've discussed, just some words of encouragement as well.
Well, maybe briefly before I unfortunately have to go.
Yes.
But what we see already is that you get a wonderful idea how these business models could scale up,
yes,
and how good that would be for the global energy transition.
Yes.
But then again, you see that there are some policy issues.
Yeah.
and there are some network issues. And I think that is exactly why this is so important to bring them on stage on such a conference, because we have to discuss policy issues in order to scale up those ideas, and we have to bring people together in this kind of network, and we just have to encourage everybody to invest in these things, and that's the task we at the German Energy Agency will try to fulfill. And maybe that's what I see again when I hear them speak.
Fantastic, excellent. And that was just a fantastic cue to the next subject I want us to discuss is, are you supported? Thank you very much, our special guest, Andrea, and founder of the SET Awards. Thank you for your presence and your comments. So are we supported? Are we supported by the policies within the markets within which you work? This will be the opportunity to maybe tell us what's working, which policies are working for you, and where you'd like to see some changes. And I'm going to start with you.
Again.
Yes, again.
It's not an easy question again.
It's not an easy question. So you get to set the stage for us. Thank you.
I will try.
Thank you.
I think for the moment it's a good time for our technology.
Yeah.
And the supportive network from politics and everything is there.
Good.
But what is needed is more support for startups, because the first years to go to this stage were very hard, and I think there are other good inventors out there, and there are a lot of other startups out there that need more support, and we need more rules because they go in such high risks with the things they are doing to bring up such industries and to bring up such new startups. And to go the first years is very hard. And there is much more support needed. And the risks have to be seen. I mean, if there's a corona crisis, no one has to apply for insolvency processes. But startups always are in higher risks than in a corona crisis.
Yeah.
Much higher risks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these rules that have to be adapted for such, especially technology startups, because they have the highest risks at all, because they have to invest in the technology and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think putting on my startup founder hat, what you said absolutely resonated with me, because going into the COVID period, we raising funds and really influencing the policy environment happens. And then this global event, for me anyway, just completely wiped out, 2 years of opportunity, because in an emerging market where I work in, the investors felt that they might have to do more of a public health response, so no more of the energy, because it wasn't seen as a critical emergency in the light of COVID. So having the right policy frameworks where we keep the agenda of energy access, of the energy transition front and center, so it is not kind of put to one side, because of something else bigger happening. For example, right now we have the conflict in the war in Ukraine as well, and then you're finding governments moving towards, responding to that crisis to the detriment of providing the necessary support that is needed with all these other issues that we are trying to solve, right? The lack of energy was slow moving, right, with the climate change slowly building up, and then now it really has become an emergency, such as what we have been told. So definitely a stable policy environment is something that I absolutely resonate with. But I'm really encouraged that you say that for your organization, the policy environment is supportive for now. That is a very rare statement, certainly for where I come from. The policy environment usually is quite unstable. Anyway, so I'm curious to know whether Village Data, what would you like to see differently? What's working in the policy environment, and what changes would you like to see?
So for us, being a data and software solution, I think we don't come across as many policies and governance as people do that do work with hardware solutions or that have a closer linkage to the actual development of things. So I have to say I have had a very beautiful experience of the ambition that the governments and the policymakers are making. I know there's always this stereotypical, like the cliche in the private sector, that public sector is so slow and that nothing happens and that digitization is moving so slow. But I really have to say I have witnessed firsthand that there are really, really big efforts being made to use solutions like ours, to implement them in organizations that are really huge, where things like this are really a bureaucratic nightmare, but they push for it, they speed these things up, and they want the benefits to reach the end beneficiaries. And I think that's a really, really nice thing to watch and witness. I agree with you, Linda, that it has been, I would say, a painful experience to see that this war accelerated the whole energy transition topic in Europe once again, where I thought it's just sad to see that something like this had to happen, to get another gear up, which could have been done maybe without such a tragic side event happening. But as some of the speakers yesterday also said, that a crisis is always also bringing up opportunities, which I'm glad that many of the nations are taking now.
Absolutely. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And certainly this one touches on a subject near and dear to us as the energy transition. That's very powerful. Thank you for reminding us of that, Eileen. Claudia, your thoughts as well, because you started to discuss how the policy framework supports you, so perhaps you can do a deeper dive into that. What would you like to see changed?
Mm-hmm. Yes. For us, our business model works on its own. We don't need any in the energy market. We only need a liberalized energy market where it's possible that anybody can sell energy. There's no monopolies on that. And what we need, on the other hand, though, are clear regulations and standardized processes to get a supplier license, for example, to be able to sell the power to our clients. We see that in some markets. In other markets, it's more fluid, flexible. There's sudden new movements that change.
Say Kenya. You can say Kenya.
you got the reference. There's always surprise, but that's what of course, every business has to, of course, also anticipate. And also feed-in tariffs and net metering systems, they help also with, especially when you deal with businesses, because they close on the weekends, for example, don't produce, but the solar system produces power, so it could be fed into the grid and would go to waste. On the other hand, coming back to Germany and to the policy that I mentioned, it's the European Crowdfunding Service Provider regime, which is a long word for a simple passporting solution. So you apply for one license, for example, in Germany, in one EU country, and you can offer your solution or the transparent and direct green investment opportunities that we have, we could offer them in other EU countries. This is what the EU wants and what they put in a beautiful regulation. However, the German implementation of that law puts employees like me into personal liability, which is a risk that nobody wants to take. So basically the German government, and we hope that with the new government they might look into this again, it kind of puts a brake on rolling out from Germany and to the European crowd market, actually. So this is things where you have a working business model, you are innovative, but then, and also the political will is there, but it stopped at this point with the implementation.
Thank you. Sounds like it's a solvable situation.
Hopefully, yes. Maybe not in Germany, but...
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Over to you, Sebastian.
So I think overall, I must say that there has probably never been a better time to be a climate tech entrepreneur.
Wow.
We started 4 years ago. I always say that was pre-Greta, just a little bit before Fridays for Future caught public attention. And we started as a productivity solution, because we knew that anything in the eco area would have probably scared away investors that kind of burned a lot of money in the decade before. You wouldn't have gotten attention for this. So just us being on this panel today, for example, and having a prize with a lot of visibility in the media, etc., that's really valuable. And I think that's things that weren't available before. And we mostly have everything today that we need. We have access to capital. Even venture capital is back in that market, and they're betting big today. We see that that policy is changing at a speed that was unheard of. Although I agree that trigger is probably something that we would have liked to avoid. But I think the most important policy that we need is that the alternatives for clean energy, that we stop subsidizing them. No? So basically, many countries are still subsidizing fossil fuels. And what we really need is the carbon taxation that we start seeing. So to give really energy a fair market value, and then I don't think that any real clean energy company needs public support anymore. Just be sure that we have fair market conditions, that we stop subsidizing what we don't want to have anymore. And I think there are a lot of companies that will flourish and change the energy system for the better.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, thank you. This is definitely a rare first for me to sit with entrepreneurs who feel, for the most part, supported by their policy frameworks. That's fantastic. So for any innovators out there, I want to echo what Sebastian has said. It's never been a better time to be a climate innovator. That is something that I am going to take with me and maybe start to believe in my own space. And so I'm sure you've all got your founder stories. I've quite a few bruises, but certainly the word of hope is very, very powerful. There's never been a better time to be a climate entrepreneur. Fantastic. Well, panelists, I'm going to press a little bit more in the last set of 10 minutes of our conversation here. And, we started to touch on that issue about resilience. And right now, obviously, the topic on everyone's mind is we've got the COVID-19 that is still ongoing. A lot of us want to think that it is gone. It is still with us. Now we've got the compounding geopolitical matters. As an East African Kenyan, we've got drought conditions, extreme drought conditions that are really impacting the most vulnerable amongst us. We have forgotten that we had a locust invasion. In East Africa, maybe you heard about it or maybe you didn't. But all these vulnerabilities really come to show that we cannot innovate fast enough, right? The work that you're doing is basically needed yesterday, right? So again, for all the innovators out there looking into the energy space, we really do need all hands on deck and make sure that we are working together cooperatively as we've been encouraged to make this a reality. So with those few words, I want to, again, perhaps have you drill down more how your specific innovation helps support vulnerable communities who are the first to feel the effects of climate change, right? Developed nations, they have adaptation capability. From a financing standpoint, maybe from a technological standpoint, but that is not equal across the world. So just thinking through how your innovation has a global platform and how your innovation helps protect the most vulnerable amongst us who are the first hit when climate change is a reality. I know that's a big one. And you know what, Mr. Dr. Kuhn? I am going to spare you this one, and then I'm going to ask Sebastian to start this one for us, and then we'll come down this way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, so we're doing this round backwards.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm going to make it short. I think it is always best if you give people tools. I'm a huge believer in giving people tools to act on. And what we give the people today in Europe is a possibility to actually take matter into their own hands. They don't need to wait for anything to be invented, but they have a solution to take clean energy and to use it in their everyday work. And they have the decision. It's a decision they can take today. They have to purchase something. They get their money back. It's a good investment. And this is the same thing I want to apply to in general. And we want to make tools for people, and especially for smaller communities, to act on. As you said before, I don't want to keep waiting for a utility to take the arbitrary decision to connect my house to the grid. So I can take things into my own hands. I can maybe some day I can take out my smartphone. I can push a button in the app and say I need electricity, and someone is going to deliver that electricity to me. And if I'm a good customer and that whole thing turns well, then in the next stage I'm going to be investable. So I'm paying my bills. Someone might put a landline to my house, or someone might build a rooftop PV system on my house, and we can enforce that cycle. We can go forward, but I really would like to see that everyone has something they can do now to improve their situation, to act on climate change, and to take the first step. And I think a lot of people they just feel there's this fear of something coming up, and what you really want is really a possibility to change things and to take things in your own hands.
Fabulous, democratizing energy.
Hopefully, it's a very big aim. I know.
No, but absolutely.
And I really see that all of the solutions we heard today are kind of just puzzle pieces in getting that done.
I like that. That's very powerful. Thank you, Claudia.
That was really a great cue for democratization, actually, because this is us being present only in emerging markets, and so implementing our solution there is already doing some of that work. So we are producing the energy where it is consumed, already contributing to the decentralized power supply and we don't need for a grid to develop that clean energy and go to that energy transition. We are making it possible now and fast. We're fast in our implementation also because the clients don't need any upfront capital, because it's brought from the developed world into to the countries where it's needed. And also with that, since our beginning, of course, since our clients do not need to invest any capital into renewable energy solutions, they can focus on their core business, and access to finance for them is really in those markets very, very important, and they can put it into their core business and strengthen the businesses, and with that the communities around them, because they of course have more security for their employees, etc. So this is something we are already doing today, and with outrolling in more markets and helping our clients to become more independent of the grid and more independent also of fossil fuels, I think we can really tackle a lot of the challenges that we are seeing right now, and that, as you rightly put, this is said that this is put to the agenda now only because of this war, but it's a good crisis that we need to use.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Well, in our case, this last question is basically the core of our mission.
Yeah.
So, as I said in the introduction, our main markets are the developing countries. And when I talk about the technology that we use and develop, it's like speaking of Earth observation data and data platforms, this all sounds like is very, very sophisticated state-of-the-art technology, but what we're doing with it is essentially bringing light into the data darkness that is currently the situation in those geographical areas. Yeah. And to shed light on this, like we work in places where, for instance, rural areas in lots of African countries where it is not known how many people live in a village, or if they have infrastructure there, or what type of commercial activities they have. And now imagine investors or governments wanting to bring development and wanting to channel investments into those places without knowing enough about the basic conditions. And so I see this as absolutely our top priority that we're trying to solve with our technology, that these things can be catalyzed there on scale and with fast speed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Data, absolutely powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a risky situation we are in. I think there is not much more fossil fuel available at the moment, and that's a major problem for the whole planet and for all regions.
Some would argue that we have quite a few reserves.
Yeah, we have 50% of the reserves, I would guess.
Yeah.
But that means that we from now on will not be able to produce more. We will produce less every day. And that's the point where wars will start, because everyone wants to have those percents. And it's a risky situation we are in, and it's more risky for the states that are not as powerful. And now we depend on these last reserves, and we have to power up the renewable energy sources, and we have to do that fast.
Yeah.
And we have to do the second thing, which we are working on, to raise the efficiency level. You know, with our technology, you can reach up to 90% of production of electricity, for example, whereas a standard motor reaches about 25 to 30%. It's a huge difference that you have factor of 3, depending on the application, factor of 5. And having 5 times the amount of energy is filling up those few percents, and we need a lot of energy also to build more solar cells. They are not produced by nothing. If you want to raise the amount of solar cells and wind power, then you have to invest energy, and that's the risk we are in. And we don't rely only on these power sources, but also on raw materials. And that's the next critical point, because there is not cobalt available for more than 10 years. So with lithium cobalt cells, we will not reach anything. And lithium is also fully in the hands of China. And if we have to apply sanctions because they start wars, we are in a very risky situation. I don't hope it will come to that point, but as I started with, the risks are getting higher now. So we have to fastly improve the efficiency levels. So we have to invest in fuel cells, and we have to invest in all other energy sectors.
No, that's absolutely powerful, and God forbid any of that happens with the interdependencies that we have seen, that have been thrown open with the current events. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see for yourself, you've heard for yourselves how these 4 individuals and the organizations that they represent absolutely are in the cutting edge of innovations towards our 2030 climate goals. You've heard their success stories. You've heard how they've entered new markets, how they brought in new technologies, how they're applying technology integrated into platforms that can then be used in a democratic fashion. You know, that is absolutely powerful. So I want to congratulate you 4 again, but I also know that there are quite a few winners since the set was invented or came to life 6 years ago. So as we go into our final round of comments, I want you to, just, conclude with your final thoughts about this conference, your final thoughts about being a SET Award winner. But most importantly, I would like you to, spare some words of encouragement that you can share with other innovators out there who are looking to advance SDG 7, right? So that would be very, very powerful for all the young people, and maybe not so young like myself, who are listening to you and how you've managed to succeed. A couple words of encouragement that we can take away will be powerful. I'm certainly taking away. It's never been a better time to be a climate innovator. That's really going to stay with me for a while. So help me close the panel by giving us your final words and your encouraging words. Yeah. I think you can start with that.
So be part of the SET Awards.
Yes.
For us, it was really helpful to win the SET Awards last year because it gives you a lot of a platform that you really need.
And the platform, of course, there's a visibility. You are here.
Yes.
What else are you encouraging others that they're going to receive that you've received from the SET Award?
It's also credibility that you get because it's a huge community that checked on the technology in the background. A lot of professors that are really well known and have a lot of experience in these topics.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent. How about you, Aileen?
So my takeaway is definitely the strength of partnership that is needed, but is also happening between the public and private sector. And I was very excited about having Professor Mazzucato here on the first day, who's promoting this message very strongly, that we need a very strong partnership here, and that especially the public sector needs to be involved even more, not only as a regulator, but also in participating to move this all forward. And my words of encouragement would probably, Sebastian, inspired by what you said before, go to investors and the people with the money, saying that they should really come along and continue on this path that is happening, but also get into it and invest in the future rather than in the past.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah. Claudia, your remarks, please.
Yes, I think with energy transition and having it done worldwide, I see it globally, and also make the energy transition a just one. This is what was discussed this morning. Is, I think, very very important to always keep that in mind. And when we talk about that, it's also talking about economic development. It has to go hand in hand with that. From the encouraging words from a startup that's now 7 years old, I mean, it's all about realizing your first, I think you can all agree, realizing your first project and demonstrating that it's working. And partnerships like with the German energy agencies and other supporting public partners, you can get your foot into the market. You can also enter new markets with the support from the public. And I think when you believe in your solution and it's tackling those SDGs and the climate goals, then you should go ahead and move forward.
Fantastic. No, thank you. Last but not least, Sebastian.
Yes, so a lot of takeaways from my side. Maybe the most important is that walking away from a corporate career that I was in before and actually starting my own business, it was a hugely rewarding experience. So I really want to recommend to everyone out there I think entrepreneurship is probably not for everyone, but everyone who has thought about it, who wants to do it, I would say try it, go ahead. There's whatever you think of, there is probably a customer out there who was waiting for you to come by and offer that solution. And there's nothing better, the moment when you realize, oh, I have actually solved a problem, that has been there before. And so for me, that was always really important. I think also, if you consider entrepreneurship I want to encourage everyone to really work on the problems that matter. We see a lot of talent going into, I don't know, NFTs, etc. I think we have huge problems out there, and the transformation of the energy system is probably one of the biggest challenges that we ever had. So I really want to encourage people to work on these problems and really join us or any of the other startups. So if you don't want to fund your own company, there are a lot of quickly growing companies that need all the talent they can get. And I promise you, it's going to be as rewarding working for a company with a vision, with a mission to change things as founding your own. And and that's really something we all need. So people to join us. We're not lonely entrepreneurs here. We enjoy having the greatest talent with us to move things. And I hope we can make this a movement. Actually, So it doesn't really matter which movement or which of the companies you join, or if you found your own, but in the end, it's really important that you start taking action. And here we have it again. It's your chance to take action, to do something about it. And I think that's what we all did. And we want to encourage others, or at least I want to encourage others to do the same.
Fantastic. Absolutely a powerful last round from each of our speakers. We have heard, just literally, solve problems, and just as we are doing here on stage. And I really like that. Find problems that actually matter. And I would like to offer that the climate change energy issue is a problem worth your time. Thank you very much, panelists, and I wish you all the best. We will be cheering on and hoping for your continued success, especially as we protect the most vulnerable amongst us with your innovations. Act local, think global. Those are the words that I would leave us with. Thank you very much for joining us today in celebrating this amazing startups at the SET, at the SET Innovation panel. Thank you.